Jonas had been to hundreds of planets and seen countless alien species, but nothing ever quite compared to the sight of the intergalactic station he stood in now. A massive structure, floating in the middle of space, surrounded by stars and dark matter. It was a place where the most unusual beings from all corners of the galaxy gathered to trade, discuss politics, or simply rest. The hum of activity around him was overwhelming, yet oddly comforting. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked outside, some sleek and modern, others worn and battered from years of travel. Each one represented a different world, a different story. Jonas, a seasoned diplomat for Earth, had been sent on this mission to negotiate a trade agreement with the most mysterious and powerful species in the galaxy, the Seraphians. They were ancient, wise, and feared. Their reputation for secrecy was legendary, and no one really knew what they wanted or how they operated. But it didn't matter to Jonas. His job was to represent Earth, to try to bring peace and stability to a galaxy that seemed to be always on the brink of chaos. He entered the bustling bar at the station, where humans and aliens alike gathered to relax after long days of negotiations. His mind was heavy with the weight of his responsibilities, the pressure of being the representative of an entire species. The deals, the back and forth, the endless talks with no real resolution. It was exhausting. Jonas didn't mind the work, but the pressure of it all often left him feeling lost, questioning his place in the grand scheme of things. He wondered if his presence here, his efforts to bridge the gaps between different races, would make a real difference, or if it was all just a fleeting moment in the vastness of space. He leaned against the bar, ordering a drink, trying to quiet the endless thoughts that filled his mind. The coolness of the glass against his hand did little to calm him. His eyes wandered around the room, taking in the colorful mix of species and voices that filled the air. It was a beautiful chaos, a reminder that humanity was only one small part of the grand, complex universe. As he scanned the room, his gaze settled on a figure standing near the far wall. She stood out, even in a place as diverse as this. The alien woman was unlike any species he had ever encountered. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, glowing faintly under the dim lights. Her eyes shimmered like stars, and her hair, a shade of silver so bright it almost seemed to glow, flowed down her back in waves. There was something hypnotic about the way she moved, a fluid grace that seemed almost too perfect for the mechanical world around her. Jonas couldn't help but stare. He wasn't sure what it was that drew him to her. Maybe it was the beauty of her appearance, or perhaps there was something more, a sense of mystery, an aura of power and wisdom that radiated from her. She seemed out of place in the bar, as though she belonged to a different time, a different reality altogether. She caught his gaze, and for a moment the world around him seemed to blur. He quickly looked away, embarrassed by his obvious staring, but he felt her eyes on him. She didn't look away. Instead, she smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that made his heart race. Jonas took a deep breath and tried to focus on something else, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. There was something about her, something that he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just her beauty, it was something more, something that seemed to draw him in like a magnet. The alien woman took a step forward, moving through the crowd with the same effortless grace. As she approached, Jonas felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. What was she doing here? Why was she looking at him like that? His mind raced with questions, but before he could form any coherent thoughts, she was standing in front of him. She tilted her head slightly, studying him for a moment. Her gaze was piercing, as though she could see right through him, beyond the layers of his thoughts, his doubts, his insecurities. It was unsettling, yet strangely comforting. "You're lost in thought," she said softly, her voice smooth and melodic. "I can see it in your eyes." "What is it that weighs so heavily on your mind?" Jonas blinked, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't expected her to speak, let alone speak to him. He cleared his throat, trying to shake off the surprise. He started, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. He wasn't used to opening up to strangers, especially not an alien stranger in a foreign station on the edge of the galaxy. It's just, there's a lot on my mind. You know, being here representing Earth, it's a lot to carry. The alien woman's smile widened as if she understood more than he had said. I know what it feels like, she said, but perhaps you're overthinking it. Jonas furrowed his brow, confused. Overthinking it? How could I not think about it? The fate of entire species depends on these talks. You misunderstand, she said gently. It's not about what you carry, but what you choose to let go of. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, Jonas felt like he was truly being seen, not just as a diplomat, but as a person. Before he could respond, she took a step closer. Her presence felt overwhelming, and for a moment, Jonas could barely breathe. She was so close now that he could feel the warmth of her body, a soft, comforting heat that seemed to radiate from her skin. He realized belatedly that he had been staring at her again. The woman noticed his gaze and tilted her head, her smile now playful. So, she said, her voice laced with amusement, you like my body? Jonas froze. The question was unexpected, jarring. He didn't know how to answer. He wasn't sure if she was being serious or teasing him. His face flushed, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from hers. There was something about her, something that made him feel both nervous and alive. She was so confident, so sure of herself, and it made him feel like he was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The only sound in the room was the hum of distant conversations, but to Jonas, it all faded away. All that remained was the woman in front of him, her eyes searching his, waiting for a response. For a moment, Jonas felt like a child again, unsure of how to act, unsure of what to say. His mind raced and he stumbled over his words, trying to form a coherent thought. But nothing came. He realized with a jolt that he had been completely caught off guard by her question. And yet, there was something about it that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. The alien woman didn't seem to mind his silence. Instead, she simply smiled again, as though she had been waiting for this reaction all along. Jonas cleared his throat, finally finding his voice. He stopped himself. There was no point in denying it. Yes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You are extraordinary. Her smile widened and she nodded, as though his response was exactly what she had expected. Thank you, she said, her voice warm and sincere. But remember, it's not just about what you see, it's about what you feel. Jonas felt the weight of her words settle deep inside him. He had always been focused on appearances, on the surface level of things, but now, standing here in front of her, he realized there was so much more to her than just her appearance. There was a depth to her, a mystery that he couldn't quite grasp but felt drawn to nonetheless. The woman took a step back, giving Jonas space to breathe. She tilted her head, studying him once more. I can see the uncertainty in your eyes, she said. But perhaps that's not such a bad thing. Jonas didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure what to think anymore. He had come to the station to negotiate, to represent his people. But now, standing in front of this alien woman, everything felt different. He felt like he was on the verge of something big, something that would change the course of his life and perhaps the future of humanity itself. For a moment, there was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with possibility, with the weight of unspoken thoughts and emotions. Finally, the woman spoke again, her voice gentle but filled with purpose. You're not just here to negotiate, are you, Jonas? He looked at her, unsure of how to answer. But deep down, he knew she was right. This wasn't just about the trade deal. It was about something much bigger, something that he wasn't yet ready to fully understand. No, he said slowly, I suppose I'm not. Her smile returned, and for a moment, Jonas felt like he was standing at the edge of a great adventure, one that he hadn't yet begun but knew was waiting for him. Jonas stood there for a moment, his mind still spinning from the woman's unexpected question. Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog, making it hard for him to focus on anything else. He couldn't decide if he was more intrigued or embarrassed. His face had flushed earlier, and now he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. There was something about her presence that made him feel both incredibly alive and utterly uncertain. The alien woman, Ilara, didn't seem to notice his internal struggle. Or perhaps she did, but she didn't seem to care. Her smile was gentle, as though she had asked him a question that everyone in the galaxy had asked, and this was simply another conversation, another piece of the puzzle. She took another step back, her gaze never leaving his. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a quiet understanding that seemed to come from a place far beyond anything Jonas had experienced. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. He had dealt with dignitaries, politicians, and soldiers from various planets, but none had carried themselves with the same air of mystery and power that Ilara did. She wasn't just another diplomat or negotiator. She was someone who existed on a different plane of reality, someone whose presence seemed to bend the very fabric of the station around her. Jonas opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? Should he apologize for his behavior? Should he make light of the situation, try to brush it off with a joke? Or should he simply admit the truth, that he was completely captivated by her? Ilara seemed to sense his confusion. She tilted her head slightly as though studying him. There was a soft curiosity in her expression, but also something else, something deeper. It was as though she could see beyond his surface, beyond the diplomat and the man who had spent years negotiating with people he could barely understand. She saw the human in him, the part that questioned everything, the part that was never quite sure of where he stood in the grand scheme of the universe. "Don't worry," she said, her voice warm and reassuring. "I'm not here to make you uncomfortable." Jonas blinked. "Then what is it that you want from me?" Ilara's smile deepened, though it remained enigmatic. "I want nothing from you, Jonas. I'm not here to make deals or sign agreements. I'm here because I find you interesting." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "Interesting? Why?" "I'm just a diplomat here to do a job. Nothing special about me." Her eyes softened, and she took another step closer. The space between them seemed to shrink with every movement she made. "That's where you're wrong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're more than just a diplomat. You are a representative of your entire species. You carry the weight of humanity's hopes and dreams on your shoulders, and yet you don't even realize how extraordinary that is." Jonas swallowed, his throat dry. He wasn't used to hearing people talk about him like that. Most saw him as just another cog in the machine, another face in the crowd of negotiators and diplomats. But Ilara, she made him feel like he was standing on the edge of something far greater than he could imagine. "I don't think I'm as important as you think I am," Jonas muttered, almost to himself. Ilara shook her head. "You underestimate yourself, Jonas. It's not just about the deals you make or the words you say. It's about the potential within you, and within your species. Humans are capable of so much more than they realize. You are capable of so much more than you realize." Jonas looked at her, unsure of what to say. He had spent so much of his life focused on the politics of the galaxy, on the negotiations and alliances that seemed to consume every waking hour. He had always believed that peace was something to be achieved through careful diplomacy, through careful calculations of power and influence. But Ilara was offering something different, something that went beyond politics, beyond the endless cycle of trade deals and agreements. She was offering him a glimpse into something far deeper, something that seemed to lie just beyond the horizon. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ilara's smile softened, and she took a step back, giving him space. "I mean that you, Jonas, are not just here to negotiate a trade deal. You're here for something much greater than that. You're here because humanity stands on the precipice of something new, something extraordinary, and you have a role to play in that. Whether you realize it or not. Jonas stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. They didn't make any sense. How could he, a simple diplomat, be part of something so grand? He was just a man trying to do his job. There were countless others out there who were far more important, far more capable of shaping the future of humanity. Why had she chosen him? Why me? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. Alara tilted her head, her eyes searching his. Because you are human, Jonas. Because you are one of the few species in this galaxy with the potential to evolve beyond your physical limitations, to rise above the constraints of your biology and your mind. You have the potential to reach for something far greater than anything your species has ever known. But you have to be willing to see it. Jonas felt a cold chill run down his spine. What was she saying? Was she suggesting that humanity could transcend its physical form, that they could become something more than human? It sounded absurd. And yet, something about the way she spoke, the conviction in her voice, made him wonder if it was possible. I don't understand, he admitted. How can we humans evolve like that? Alara's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. The first step is to realize that you are not limited by your biology, by your mind, or by the world around you. You are not just your body. You are not just your thoughts. You are part of something much greater than yourself, something vast and incomprehensible. And when you realize that, when you embrace it, you will be ready for what comes next. Jonas's mind raced as he tried to process her words. It was a lot to take in, more than he could understand in one moment. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what she was suggesting, or if it was even possible. But one thing was clear. Alara had seen something in him that he couldn't see in himself, and that, more than anything, made him wonder if perhaps she was right. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, Alara took a step back. Her smile returned, warm and knowing. Don't worry, Jonas. You're not meant to understand all of this right now, but you will. Soon enough, you'll see it for yourself. Just remember, the future of humanity lies not in what you do, but in what you are willing to become. With that, she turned and began to walk away, leaving Jonas standing there, lost in thought once again. This time, though, it wasn't the weight of his responsibilities that filled his mind. It was something else, something far greater, something he couldn't quite grasp but felt in the deepest part of his soul. And as he watched Alara disappear into the crowd, Jonas couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet understand. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance to become something more than it had ever imagined. Jonas had never felt so disoriented in his entire life. The conversation with Alara continued to linger in his mind, weaving itself into his thoughts in ways he couldn't quite explain. He had come to this station with a single mission, to secure a trade agreement between Earth and the Seraphians. He had expected politics, negotiations, and diplomacy to dominate his every waking moment. But instead, he found himself caught in a conversation that had little to do with trade and everything to do with something much bigger. Alara's words echoed in his mind. You are not just your body. You are not just your thoughts. You are part of something much greater than yourself. Those words sent shivers down his spine, as if she had unlocked a door inside him that he didn't even know existed. He wasn't sure whether to be frightened or exhilarated by her statements. How could humanity evolve beyond its physical and mental limitations? Was that even possible? And why had she chosen him to share this revelation? It had been a few hours since their conversation, but the weight of her words remained heavy. He tried to refocus on his mission, telling himself that he was here to do a job, not to get lost in philosophical discussions with an alien woman. But there was something about Alara that he couldn't shake. She wasn't just a representative of her species. She was something else entirely. She made him feel like he was standing on the edge of an entirely new reality, one where humanity had the potential to transcend everything they had ever known. Jonas decided to take a walk around the station to clear his mind. The station was massive, filled with bustling markets, traders from dozens of different planets and strange, unfamiliar species. The hum of activity filled the air, and the neon lights flickered above, casting strange shadows on the walls. It was a beautiful chaos, yet all Jonas could focus on was the conversation he had with Alara. Her smile, her words, the way she seemed to see through him, all of it made his heart race and his mind whirl. As he walked through the crowded corridors, Jonas tried to focus on the task at hand. There were talks to be had, deals to be made. He was a diplomat, and that was what he was supposed to be focused on. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was calling to him. He stopped by a window, looking out into the endless void of space. The view was breathtaking. Stars, nebulae, and distant planets stretched out in every direction. For a brief moment, Jonas forgot about everything. The trade deal, the negotiations, even Alara. He just allowed himself to be swallowed by the beauty of the cosmos. It was a reminder that, no matter how complex and chaotic life on this station was, the universe was still vast and full of mysteries beyond comprehension. Just as he was lost in thought, he felt a presence beside him. He turned to see Alara standing there, her violet skin glowing softly in the dim light of the station. She was wearing the same serene expression, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. "You've been thinking about what I said," she said, her voice gentle but firm as though she already knew the answer. Jonas nodded, unable to deny it. "I can't stop thinking about it," he admitted. "It doesn't make sense to me. How could humans or anyone evolve beyond their biology? It sounds impossible." Alara smiled, the corners of her lips curving up in a knowing way. "I understand why you would think that. You see your species as limited by your bodies, by your minds. But that's only because you've never truly understood what lies beyond them." Jonas shook his head, still struggling to wrap his mind around her words. "But what does that even mean? How can we evolve past our physical selves? We are what we are." "You're not what you think you are," Alara said softly. "Humanity has only scratched the surface of its potential. Your species is unique, Jonas. You are capable of things that you cannot even imagine. But to reach that potential, you must let go of the idea that you are bound by your physical form." Jonas frowned, trying to understand. "But we are bound by our bodies. We can't escape that, can we?" Alara's eyes softened. "That's the beauty of it. You don't have to escape your body. You have to learn to transcend it. The mind, the spirit, it's all connected. Your species has the potential to break free from the constraints you've placed on yourselves. But to do that, you must first see that you are more than just flesh and bone." Jonas stared at her, feeling a mix of awe and confusion. He had always believed in the limits of human nature. He had seen it in his work, how humans were driven by fear, greed, and self-preservation. They were constantly fighting against one another, striving for power, and yet never truly understanding what they could become if they worked together. But Alara was saying something different. She was suggesting that humanity had the ability to rise above all of that, to become something greater. "What are you saying?" Jonas asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That humanity is ready for something, beyond what we've ever known." Alara nodded slowly. "Yes. But it's not something that can happen overnight. It's a process, one that requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to let go of old beliefs. The first step is realizing that the world you know is just a small part of something much larger. Once you understand that, you'll begin to see the truth of what I'm telling you." Jonas's mind raced. Could humanity really evolve beyond its physical limitations? Was it even possible? He wanted to believe her, but it was hard to imagine. He had spent so much of his life focused on tangible, practical matters, diplomacy, trade agreements, and the like. But now, standing here with Alara, he felt as if he had been given a glimpse of something much bigger, something that would change everything. "But how?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "How do we even begin?" Alara smiled again, a soft, knowing smile. "It starts with you, Jonas. It starts with understanding that you are not just a diplomat, not just a representative of Earth. You are a part of something much greater, something that transcends all of that. Once you accept that, the path will reveal itself to you, and you will see the next step." Jonas was silent for a long time, trying to process everything she had said. His mind was spinning, but there was a quiet sense of excitement building inside him. For the first time in a long while, he felt like there was something more to his life than just the daily grind. Something more than just the negotiations, the deals, and the politics. He felt like he was on the brink of something incredible, something that could change everything. As he looked out at the stars once again, he realized that Alara had given him a gift, a new way of seeing the world. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was a way forward for all of humanity. "I don't know if I understand fully," Jonas said finally, "but I want to. I want to learn." Alara's smile widened and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the first step, Jonas. You're ready to see what lies beyond. And when you do, you will understand that humanity's true potential has always been within your grasp. You just have to reach for it." Jonas nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose begin to stir within him. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. He knew that. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, a path that would lead to something far greater than anything he had ever imagined. Jonas spent the next few days in a whirlwind of thoughts, each one pulling him in a different direction. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Alara's face, heard her voice, felt the weight of her words settle into his mind. She had shown him a glimpse of something vast and unknown, something far beyond the life he had known. He couldn't ignore it, no matter how hard he tried. Her presence lingered in his thoughts, and the idea of humanity's potential to transcend its physical limitations kept repeating in his mind, like a question that demanded an answer. He had come to this station with one mission, to finalize a trade agreement with the Seraphians. But now he realized his mission had changed. It wasn't just about trade or diplomacy anymore. It was about something much bigger, something that could change the course of humanity's future. Jonas had spent years in the field of diplomacy, trying to bridge gaps between species, to foster understanding, and to create peace. But no matter how hard he worked, he had always felt like he was just a small part of a much larger, more complicated system. Nothing ever seemed to truly change, no matter how many deals were signed or agreements made. But now, with Alara's words in his mind, he realized that maybe the change he had been searching for wasn't something that could be achieved through political maneuvering. It wasn't something that could be negotiated at a table. It was something deeper, something that had to come from within. It was the realization that humanity's potential had nothing to do with what they could achieve in the physical world. It had everything to do with what they could become, what they could reach for, if only they were willing to let go of their old ways of thinking. And in that moment, Jonas understood. Humanity wasn't just meant to survive. It was meant to thrive, to evolve into something greater than it had ever been. But that kind of evolution didn't come easily. It required letting go of the past, of old beliefs, and embracing the unknown. Jonas found himself walking the same path he had walked before, through the crowded corridors of the station, past the bustling markets, and into the dimly lit corners where the traders and diplomats gathered. The noise and the chaos around him felt distant now, as if he was no longer a part of it. The trade negotiations seemed trivial in comparison to what Alara had opened his eyes to. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he felt that he had to keep moving forward. He had to keep searching for the answer, whatever it was. And somehow, He knew that it wasn't here in this station or in the trade deals he had come to make. It was somewhere else, somewhere he had to go, somewhere he had to be. As he walked, his thoughts were interrupted by a voice, one he recognized immediately. Ilara's voice, soft but steady, calling out to him from the shadows. He turned and saw her standing at the end of the hallway, her figure glowing softly in the dim light. "Jonas," she said, her tone both calm and knowing, "I see that you've been thinking." Jonas nodded, but he didn't say anything at first. He wasn't sure what to say. How could he explain the turmoil that had been building inside him? How could he explain that the entire foundation of his life had shifted, and he wasn't sure how to find his footing again? Ilara took a step closer, her gaze never leaving him. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a quiet understanding. "You're ready, aren't you?" Jonas blinked, confused. "Ready for what?" "For the next step," she said simply. "For the journey ahead." Jonas hesitated. He had thought about what she had said, about the potential she saw in him and in humanity, but was he really ready to take that step? Could he truly let go of everything he had known and embrace something so unknown, so different? "I don't know," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure I'm ready. I don't know what this means. I don't know how to do what you're asking of me." Ilara smiled gently, as if she understood exactly what he was feeling. "You don't need to have all the answers right now. You never will. But you have something that most others don't have, Jonas. You have the willingness to learn, to change, to see the world in a new way. That is the first step." Jonas stood there, still unsure. The path ahead of him seemed both terrifying and exhilarating, but there was something in her words, in the way she spoke, that made him believe that maybe, just maybe, he could do this. He could take that first step, even if he didn't know where it would lead. "I'll try," he said finally, his voice firming with resolve. "I'll try to understand. I'll try to learn." Ilara's smile widened, and she stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder in a gesture that felt both comforting and powerful. "That's all you need to do. The rest will follow. And when you're ready, you'll see that everything you've been searching for has always been inside you." Jonas looked at her, feeling the weight of her words settle deep within him. He didn't fully understand everything she had said, but he knew that he couldn't go back to the way things had been. He couldn't continue living a life that was bound by the limitations of his understanding. He had to move forward, to grow, to evolve. Ilara looked at him one last time, her expression thoughtful. "The future of humanity isn't just about what you can do, Jonas. It's about what you can become, and that is what you will help others see." Jonas watched as she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. For a moment he stood there, motionless, as the sounds of the station filled his ears again. But this time, it felt different. The noise no longer felt like a distraction. It was just part of the world around him, part of the journey he was about to begin. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know what kind of future humanity was heading toward. But for the first time, he felt ready to find out. He felt ready to face whatever came next, to embrace the unknown, and to let go of the old ways of thinking that had kept him, and humanity, locked in place for so long. As Jonas walked away from the place where Ilara had stood, he couldn't help but wonder about the future. He had always believed that humanity's destiny was shaped by the choices they made, by the actions they took. But now he understood that it wasn't just about what they did, it was about who they became. And that was the true challenge. He was ready, ready to take the first step, ready to find the answers, ready to see what humanity could become.